Thursday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. I hope your afternoon is off to a good start. We begin by talking about the Browns. Mel Kiper Jr., the ESPN draft analyst who has Shedeur Sanders ranked very highly, talking about his thoughts on Shedeur Sanders.
In terms of Shedeur Sanders, I love the kid, love everything about Shedeur Sanders. And think about Patrick Mahomes. The 2 Super Bowls they lost, the offensive line didn't get the job done. Shedeur Sanders' offensive line 2 years ago never got the job done. They stunk. And he was 27 touchdown passes, 3 picks, almost 70% completion percentage. Got a little bit better this past year. His numbers were 74% completion percentage. I understand he doesn't have the wow factor. I understand all that. But you can win from the pocket in the NFL. It's been proven time and time again. You can be a top 10 quarterback doing the things the way Shedeur does as a surgeon in the pocket. I would take him. Do I think they will take him? Adam Schefter said yesterday, maybe not. Yeah. So we have a little pause there. You're going to be at the Pro Day field on Friday. We'll see what happens. I have Mock 4.0 coming out Tuesday. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to make my calls to my friends in the NFL. But if I were picking for the Giants, I would take Shedeur Sanders at 3.
I'll certainly have my eyes out for how many members of the Giants organization is at the Colorado Pro Day. And I'll just say this, is that if they don't take a quarterback at number 3 overall, Shedeur Sanders is 16th on my big board. So if we were going just by the big board, this would not be the pick. That being said, it would be 2 separate years in which you have a top 6 pick, and you don't take a quarterback in back-to-back years. I understand that these guys don't have the same level of grade as the 3 quarterbacks that came in last year and went 1, 2, 3.
And again, that's what it comes down to for both the Giants and the Browns. Is Shedeur Sanders worth the 2nd or 3rd pick in the draft? That's the big answer, the big question that needs to be answered. Dan Orlovsky, former NFL quarterback, current analyst, talking about what he sees when he looks at Shedeur Sanders on tape.
Shedeur's been the toughest evaluation that I've had at that position, quarterback, since I started in TV. Yeah. I don't know where you and Mel stand on it, and here's the why. Number one, is Dion going to let him go to a place like New York? I don't know. And then when you watch Shedeur's tape, it feels like half of his throws are at or behind the line of scrimmage. And that's part of the offense necessity.
Calling that or not?
And then a quarter of the plays, he's got no shot because the offensive line protection is absolutely horrific. Yeah. So you really, I walk away going, I get to evaluate a quarter of his pass attempts. And there's a lot that you like. You sit there and go, the timing, the placement, the rhythm, the maneuvering of the pocket. But then I sit there and go, well, there's times when he only looks at Travis Hunter. Probably justifiably so. There's times when I can sit here and watch him take the snap and go, I'm not looking at anything. I'm just trying to get away in the pocket and kind of predetermining that. Probably justifiably so. So, you really only get a quarter of his snaps that you sit there and go, what are you exactly when it comes to high-end talent, bottom starting, kind of where you're going to be as a player. And I think it's really difficult to get a full evaluation where comparison to like a Cam Ward, or they got so much snaps of ball that you can pay attention to.
And again, all those very important factors to consider relative to Shedeur Sanders. Owners meeting, Jimmy Haslam came out and said that the organization talked with Myles Garrett about being more of a leader off the field. Chris Sims with his thoughts on Haslam saying that they've challenged Myles Garrett to be more of a leader off the field.
This is something that you can tangibly work on as a human being. Like you said, we like him. He's a smart guy. He knows what the hell's going on here. And if he wants to usher the Cleveland Browns into some, big-time football here at the end of his career, this is what great defensive players of all time do. They do. I was with those type of guys. Warren Sapp, for as much as he might have been a renegade off the field and stuff like that, when he was in the building, it was football. He was leading. He was making sure everybody else was on their P's and Q's and really getting after it. And that goes for Derek Brooks and those type of people too. And that's why there was a culture there of awesomeness on the defensive side of the ball. And I think that's what they're saying in Cleveland. You're awesome. We know what you're doing on the field, but you can rise everybody. You're that special. And the good ones in football right now are doing that, and I just think they want that from him, and hopefully he can do it.
Tim Bielik, Damon, Wolfe will be along a little bit later to talk Browns. Let's move on to the Cavs. Cavs started last night, magic number of 4 to clinch the top spot in the Eastern Conference over the Celtics. Facing the Knicks at home, and the Cavs fell behind early and then rallied. Garland finds Evan Mobley for the dunk. Mobley had 13 points. Isaac Okoro played pretty well again. Defense leads to offense, gets the steal, and Okoro will throw it down. He had 11 points. Max Strus gets the defensive rebound. He finds Donovan Mitchell, spots up for the three. Mitchell had 27 points to lead the Cavaliers. Garland on the drive. He finds Allen for the dunk. Jared Allen had a big night as well. Gets the steal, and he will bring it home for the dunk. He had 21 points. Cavs win 24-105. Celtics also lost magic number down to 2. Kenny Atkinson on what he's seen from Jared Allen lately.
He was outstanding. He's kind of doing it on both ends, right? Defensive energy, but making plays in the paint. You know, he's driving from the top of the key too. Felt like he had that big steal, you know, with the windmill dunk that everybody enjoyed. I feel like he's trending really positive right now.
We will talk Cavs in a few minutes with Ethan Sands, Cavs beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Guardians with a day off. They were trying to avoid the sweep in San Diego against the Padres yesterday, and they fell behind early again. Third inning, Fernando Tatis, and he ends up on the double steal, stealing home to give the Padres a 1-0 lead. Third inning, Manny Machado, infield single, pretty good play by Jose Ramirez, unable to get him out. Luis Arraez scores on the play, 2-0 Padres. In the third inning, one of the big young stars ascending in this game, Jackson Merrill, 2-run blast, 4-0 Padres. He just signed a huge 9-year contract with the Padres earlier in the week. Seventh inning, Luis Arraez goes deep as well. That made it 5-1 Padres. Padres win it 5-2. They sweep the Guardians. 3 straight. Guardians struggles at the plate continue in San Diego. Here's Stephen Vogt.
I felt like we got things going again. Just weren't able to get the big hits, and nice to put a couple on there, get a couple of rallies going. So, this team never goes away. They got a lot of hits. It seemed like they found holes. That's no excuse. They beat us. And there's some things we need to clean up. There's some things we need to clean up on defense. There's some things we need to clean up at the box. I mean, obviously we're going to continue working. This was a 3-game series where we got beat 3 days in a row, and we're going to use the off day, refocus, and be ready to go. I mean, in a perfect world, we had a couple options. Shinnie had an opportunity to maybe tag the runner. We also could have gotten the ball back to home quicker. But it's a play we put on. They ran their play, we ran ours, and we had a couple options to execute. They did, and we didn't. We all know Nolan can play, and it's nice to see him getting comfortable with us. His at-bats are really, really good. The results may not always be there. That's just like any player. So really like the way Nolan is approaching. He hits the ball hard. We all know that. He's great plate discipline. So I just want him to continue to be himself and get comfortable.
Guardians 33 strikeouts, 3-game series against Padres. Got to change that. Zack Meisel, Guardians beat reporter for The Athletic. And we'll talk some Guardians a little bit later in the show. We're going to take a quick time out. We begin by talking Browns. Tim Bielik, cleveland.com, and the Plain Dealer Straight Ads. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We begin by talking Browns. Dan Orlovsky, former NFL quarterback, was asked what Kirk Cousins getting traded to the Browns would mean for the Browns.
I think the things that make sense to me are Kirk Cousins eventually will be with the Browns, and Aaron Rodgers is already going to the Steelers. I think with the Browns, if you look at it and you go, okay, well, Kenny Pickett, if Kirk Cousins becomes their starting quarterback and they add a player like Travis Hunter, if I were the Browns, I would take Travis Hunter at 2. If I was dead set on not taking a quarterback and I was getting Cousins, I got a chance now because this is still a talented roster, and Stefanski is still a very good coach. Travis Hunter would play wide receiver for me, but I think Kirk Cousins never seemed settled last year. We called his games on Monday Night Football. He never seemed comfortable. It never seemed like the right offensive fit, although I thought it would be perfect. Zack Robinson, the offensive coordinator in Atlanta, he didn't run the similar stuff that Kirk was, accustomed to. And if we're going to talk about like Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams in the play action and how Caleb hasn't done any play action, so that's going to take time. Kirk's only done play action. And so it didn't mesh for him in Atlanta because they just didn't run it. And so I think if Cleveland gets Kirk Cousins and drafts Travis Hunter at 2, I think they immediately become a competitive football team. And I would bank on that being the case.
Let's welcome in Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. And I agree with most of what Dan Orlovsky said. I would take it a step further and say, go get a running back, and then you really make it interesting. Go get a running back at 33.
Yeah, I mean, I look at this draft, and I'm going to talk about running backs tomorrow as I go through my position rankings, but I feel like for the Browns in this draft, I mean, starting with the running backs, you have to get one no matter what, maybe even 2, because you really have nothing at the position. And specifically going to Kirk Cousins, I should say outside Jerome Ford. But going back to Kirk Cousins, with obviously Russell Wilson being off the board, questions about whether the Browns are going to take Shedeur Sanders second overall or what they're going to do with that number 2 pick. I think it definitely behoves them to at least look at the Kirk Cousins thing and maybe just connecting the dots of just things that haven't happened. We haven't heard anything about them possibly really going for Carson Wentz more than, Mary Kay Cabot's report about the mutual interest with Wentz and the Browns, but nothing's happened there. I mean, 2 and 2 just says, Kirk Cousins may be an option for the Browns in that situation. I think at least getting a veteran like Cousins, even though he may be a bridge quarterback, there's not too many options out there, and he may be the best you can get. It just comes down to negotiating value between the Browns and the Falcons and reuniting him with Kevin Stefanski in an offense he's more familiar with. I think that'd be a good thing for Kirk Cousins, especially considering he's coming off that. He's in the second year off the torn Achilles, and we always know what those Achilles injuries. You're better year 2 than you are year 1.
Yeah, and the other thing that we know from the Falcons beat reporters we've had on the show, they didn't tailor the offense to Kirk Cousins, so that's something else to keep in mind. All right, as you might guess, plenty of voicemails. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave. Frank from Cleveland. One quick thing for you today. I was watching some film on Shedeur Sanders. All I see this guy do is loft passes. He's not going to get away with that in the NFL. Can he put any zip on the ball or anything? He'll be a turnover machine if he's throwing them kind of passes in the NFL. All right, Dave, you be good. Love you, brother, and talk to you soon. You and the family be safe, as always.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Tim, part of the problem, and earlier in the show, Dan Orlovsky alluded to it, bad offensive line, a lot of plays behind the line of scrimmage because offensive line can't block, no running game. It makes kind of judging what he's done at Colorado very difficult if you're an NFL evaluator.
Yeah, and I was watching the interview he had with Pat McAfee saying maybe a quarter of the plays that Shedeur Sanders ran, that's kind of where you have to evaluate him. But I think like he said, basically, almost half those plays they kind of had to run quick plays at the line of scrimmage just because the offensive line was that bad. I've talked about it so many times that he had no running game. Defenses could just tee off and come after the pass because they were never scared of the running game. And any smart offensive coach is going to just understand that you have to do stuff to help your quarterback out. And I think in that sense, that's more of coaching helping a quarterback out in a bad situation. It's just such a complicated evaluation with Shedeur because the offense he had to play was so specific and oriented a certain way because of who he had around him, especially with the offensive line issues. But as far as the call said about, lobbing passes, I think I've said before, you don't need to have a guy throwing fastballs every single time he's out there to find open targets. you have a guy who has perfect touch, putting the ball where he needs to be. I think that's more important because if you're a one-speed thrower, then that's easy to adjust to for teams. If you're throwing fastballs, you have the potential to put your receiver in danger. You're not going to be able to level those passes in between a corner and a safety, for example, or a linebacker and a safety in certain situations. So you, as a quarterback, it's not just about throwing the ball hard. You have to know where to place it. And I think with Shedeur, I think that's a skill he has. That's the reason I still like him. And even thinking about this theory, I feel like if I may spread a theory about Shedeur, the reason we haven't heard any buzz about him is because his pro days tomorrow. So many these guys have had momentum. They've had their pro days, and Shedeur hasn't had his till tomorrow. He really hasn't had a chance to have his say and really boost his stock. So I don't know if it's a strategic thing to have his pro day all the way at the beginning of April, but I do find it interesting that this could be his chance to generate some last-minute momentum and kind of, for lack of a better term, have the last word.
All right, I know you've written a series of articles relative to the draft and position groups. Wide receiver. I think the Browns need at least one, maybe two. How good of a receiver class is this?
It's not as good as last year's, but that's largely because last year's class, I said 1,000 times, is generational, and I think you've seen that kind of play out throughout the 2024 season. Looking at this year's class, obviously, number one, Travis Hunter. It seems like there's a lot of momentum towards him being the top receiver in this class. Seems like ever since Andrew Berry went to the combine initially and said he really sees him as a receiver, it seems like the momentum with Travis Hunter is trending in that direction. There's been a lot of Odell Beckham Jr. comparisons with Travis Hunter. World-class ball skills, elite athleticism, and you have to imagine he's going to get better if he focuses more on receiver than corner at the next level. So he's my clear number one guy. I would be stunned if he doesn't go at the top four. He's at the head of what I have is the fifth best position group in this draft. Number two, Ted McMillan from Arizona, 6'5" receiver, big guy, moves better than guys of his size typically do. Needs a little more nuance, and his stock has been sliding a little bit because of questions about his long speed, but still, I think I'd be stunned if he doesn't go in the top 15. And then 3 to 5 is kind of interchangeable. Depends on what you want. You have Matt Golden from Texas, who really emerged towards the end of the season. Speed, incredible body control, and he's been clutch in big situations. Then you have Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State. I've talked about him before, that I think he's a clone of Jackson Smith and Jigba, incredibly fluid, and kind of like those other slot receivers you see being big guys for big play guys like Jackson Smith and Jigba and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Egbuka could be that similar guy. And then Luther Burden III, speaking of slot receivers, 200-plus pounds at about 5'11". He did not have as good a season in 2023, and that's why he's gone from being a guy who's likely could have been a top 15 guy to a guy who may not get drafted in the first round at all. But you see a guy who can just make easy yards after the catch, really very much a yak guy, for lack of a better term. I think the 2024 season hurt him, but if a team gets 2023 Luther Burden, they're getting a very good receiver.
Before we go to break, this is from PFF. Worst PFF offensive grades by first-round picks since 2020. Colts have the worst. It's just one guy. It's Anthony Richardson. And you see the PFF grade. Titans, Wilson, Burks, a couple of offensive linemen haven't worked out, 63.6. Browns have the third worst, and it's Jedrick Wills, 65.4. You got the Panthers, Young and Leggett haven't worked out. You've got the Raiders, Ruggs didn't work out. Leatherwood didn't. Brock Bowers looks pretty good. This is a draft, and this is a draft where Andrew Berry has to go skill position, offense, heavy early.
100% agree. And I mean, I would argue, you got to start number two. I even put a YouTube short about this yesterday, that if the choice is between Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter, you have to go Travis Hunter. And it's not about Abdul Carter, the player. I think he's an outstanding player, but this may be counterproductive, saying you don't draft for need, but I think when one side of the football is just that bad, and last year the Browns offense was that bad, like I've said it before, 12th worst that DVOA has ever measured. And if you take out Jameis Winston's games, it's the worst DVOA has ever measured. And you can't possibly play complementary football if you have one half of your football team that's just non-functional. So that unit simply has to be addressed. And outside of Kenny Pickett and obviously adding 2 depth tackles in Cornelius Lucas and Tevin Jenkins, they really haven't done that. So this is a time you kind of have to load up and compete with those AFC North teams. We've talked about it so many times. it used to be a defensive division. I'd argue it's an offensive division right now. And the Browns, obviously, quarterback, they're far behind everybody else, mostly because they have one guy right now. But skill position, they lag far behind the Bengals, far behind the Ravens, and the receiving group has got some work to do to catch the Steelers. So, bottom line, this has to be a draft where Andrew Berry simply goes offense, because by and large in his track record, he hasn't done that. So he really, I think this is a draft where he has to change that approach.
Tim Bielik and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, talk more about the quarterback, Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
We're out here busting common lottery myths by talking to real players just like you. And you, sir, what's your name? Where are you from?
Tom Burrell from Lexington, Ohio.
I'm playing Powerball. I use AutoPick when I pick my numbers. Do I have better, worse, or the same odds?
Same odds. I'd say better. I still think worse. Same odds.
He's got it. It's the same. AutoPick, numbers you pick, same odds. Either way. He has it. He has it, folks. He already knows. You can learn more by going to OhioLottery.com/knowtheodds.
We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, Adam Schefter from ESPN, talking about what he's hearing relative to the Browns and Giants' top picks.
And it certainly feels like the Cleveland Browns are inclined to look elsewhere aside from quarterback. And it's starting to feel like the New York Giants at number 3 are starting to look elsewhere other than quarterback. So if the Browns don't take Shedeur Sanders at 2, and if the Giants don't take Shedeur Sanders at 3, and that is the feel that I'm getting recently, where is Shedeur Sanders going?
And Tim, that's an interesting question. And my guess is both the Browns and Giants would hope that Shedeur Sanders falls into the late part of the first round, because I don't think either one of them has a problem with Shedeur Sanders. I just don't think they're locked, solid, sure that he's going to be worthy of what would be a top 2 or 3 pick.
Well, what I think is interesting is, Shedeur Sanders, this whole draft cycle has been kind of puzzling to me, because he's had this precipitous fall when he hasn't done anything. They haven't played since December, and it seems like just ever since the combine, for whatever reason, Shedeur has just been in free fall, again, without doing really anything. I know he didn't throw at the combine. He got criticized for that, but you could also argue, why was he the only guy criticized for not throwing at the combine when Cam Ward also didn't throw? Not knocking Cam Ward, because Cam Ward is obviously worth the number 1 pick in this particular draft of the Tennessee Titans, but it just feels like Shedeur has been knocked for nothing, really. And I mean, I get he's not flashy. I get there's not the elite arm strength, but I've said before, arguably one of the most overrated things in quarterback evaluation is arm strength. I mean, how many guys have we seen with elite physical tools come in the NFL and not have success? With Shedeur, it's the elite brain, I think, that is appealing right there. That's why I personally still think he's worth the 2nd pick. I'm not buying him sliding as far as people are saying he is. I feel like I kind of need to see it on draft day before I believe it. And like I said, we'll see if we still have the same conversation after Shedeur's pro day on Friday and after the Browns have their private workout. I think a lot of it's just because he hasn't really had his opportunity to step in and really show that he is worthy of the 2nd pick by throwing, because he really hasn't since the end of the regular season.
All right, let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
I think the one thing Tommy Rees and Kevin Stefanski are going to have to do with this new offense. It's going to be young, with an experienced O-line, new running backs, another new wide receiver room, and Kevin is going to have to start working overtime to get players open and even be able to score, because we're in the AFC North where it's physically enticing on these players. So I think if Kevin Stefanski really wants to stay in Cleveland, then he must find a way to do it with a young core team that we're going to have in 2025.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Tim, I think he's going back to the offense that he had, where he was scheming people open and won with 5 different quarterbacks. And he should, as a guy that got to the level of NFL head coach, he probably believes he can do that with guys that are young.
I mean, if he can coach a P.J. Walker-led offense to beat a 49ers team that went to the Super Bowl, I think there's enough there that there's no reason to be that skeptical about Kevin Stefanski's ability as a schemer. He's done a pretty good job of it. What I think it is part of the issue, I think, is Andrew Berry needs to go out and give him some help, give him some skill position help. I talked about how at running back, this is a draft where the Browns simply have to get one because you really have nothing outside of Jerome Ford. At receiver, maybe another guy to add competition with Cedric Tillman as the number 2. Maybe if it's Travis Hunter, you have your eventual number 1 guy and you can push Jerry Jeudy to number 2 and really have a lot of versatility out there. But just not a lot. There's just not a lot of proven skill talent. And as the caller was saying, you're trying to keep up in the AFC North. It's a physical division, but it's also a high-scoring division. I mean, you got Joe Burrow and the Bengals over there. You got Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. And the Steelers have plenty of skill position talent, especially receiver after the trade for DK Metcalf. You got to keep up. It's not enough to be good on defense anymore. This is an era where it's about offense. And as much as we say defense wins championships, I believe offense has to get you there. And you're not going to win consistently in the division by holding the Bengals and the Ravens down on points. You got to be able in some areas to keep up with them. So getting back to a Kevin Stefanski offense, I think helps because there's a track record for it. But at the same time, he needs a little more reinforcements on that side of the ball.
Yeah, and to your point, they haven't won the division since 1989. So whatever you've been doing is not working. Just in case anybody wonders, 89. So let that sink in for a minute. This is also interesting. One of the guys that we got plenty of voicemails about, Joe Milton, has been traded, or they at least have agreed to a deal. Patriots are trading Joe Milton in a 7th-round pick to the Cowboys for a 5th-round pick. I bring this up not because of Joe Milton, but if Joe Milton is a pick swap for a 5th round and he's young and kind of ascending, if the Falcons expect anything other than like a 7th-round pick for Kirk Cousins, they're crazy.
Yeah, and I think that's especially if they're not going to take a lot of money. Obviously, the more money they take, the more valuable a pick the Browns would have to give up in a trade to get Kirk Cousins. And you kind of wonder how that game of chess is going to go, especially if we get to the end of the draft and say the Browns draft Travis Hunter at 2 and Jalen Milroe at, say they trade up to pick number 30 to get that 5th-year option. Jalen Milroe is probably not going to play much his rookie season. And I've said before, I would do everything in my power to redshirt him for the entire season and go to Kirk Cousins, basically say, if you have permission with the Falcons to talk to Kirk Cousins and basically say, hey, we have this guy, Jalen Milroe, but we're going to try everything we can to not play him until he's ready to go and all those sorts of things. That might be, maybe that's something that gets him interested. But again, if you're the Falcons, as much as they've been trying to create leverage out of all of this, the only leverage they have is basically, how much money is the other team willing to take as far as the quality of the draft pick? If the Browns take on more money, maybe they only give up a 5th or like a 6th-round pick at best. And if again, it's kind of that it's a scale almost of money Atlanta takes on to the pick that the other team would get in a Kirk Cousins trade. So it's an interesting balance to take there.
Tim Bielik, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Tim.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Have a good day.
Tim Bielik, make sure you check him out, cleveland.com. Always insightful stuff, especially relative to draft and what the Browns are thinking in the draft. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Damon, Wolfe from Dawgs by Nature. We continue talking Browns. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We're out here busting common lottery myths by talking to real players just like you. And you, sir, what's your name? Where are you from?
Tom Burrell from Lexington, Ohio.
I'm playing Powerball. I use auto pick when I pick my numbers. Do I have better, worse, or the same odds?
Same odds. I'd say better. I still think worse. Same odds.
He's got it. It's the same. Auto pick, numbers you pick, same odds. Either way. He has it. He has it, folks. He already knows. You can learn more by going to OhioLottery.com/knowtheodds.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams, I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports for CLE. Chris Sims, former NFL quarterback, reacting to Jimmy Haslam saying that the Browns have challenged Myles Garrett to be more of a leader moving forward.
It's working for him, but it ain't working for the team. It ain't working for the team. And I don't know if there is great leadership from the locker room there. These rumors have always kind of been there about Myles Garrett. But I think, as we know, in the NFL, like going back to Lawrence Taylor, whoever, you're a great pass rusher, you show up, you kick ass on a weekly, daily basis. Oh, well, that guy's late for the meeting. We don't care. Guy who's playing like crap, hey, you better be here on time tomorrow or you get cut, right? That's just the way it works in the world. Everything, everywhere. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Mike Tirico shows up a little late for the meeting. Nobody says anything. Chris Sims shows up a little late for the meeting. Everyone goes, hey, Chris is late. Let's make fun of him a little, blah, 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 right? I mean, that's the way it goes at times.
So welcome in Damon Wolfe from Dawgs by Nature. And Damon, it was kind of interesting that that Jimmy Haslam shared that from the owners' meeting.
Yeah, I think so. You know, that conversation has been out there for the past couple of years, you know, leadership in the locker room. And Myles has certainly been a topic of that conversation. And I think, you know, now with him getting the big contract extension, you know, the Browns should expect more out of him. I think he's certainly done, you know, a pretty good job of saying all the right things, leading from the front of the room in the media in that regard. But now I think it's time for him to take another step inside the locker room with the guys, being that example and maybe having a bigger voice and, you know, holding guys accountable.
Well, the other thing is as you win Defensive Player of the Year and you continue to stack really good years together, younger guys are going to watch you, whether you want them to or not. You've got their attention, so I think more than anything, he just has to realize how important a voice he can be. I know you wrote an article, and Andrew Berry mentioned that Browns were going to skew young at quarterback. What do you think that meant?
Yeah, that kind of really raised my eyebrows a little bit when I heard that comment, you know, especially with all the conversation about possibly bringing in either Kirk Cousins or, you know, potentially Joe Flacco. You know, that certainly does not scream skew young to me when you already have Kenny Pickett in the room. He's a younger guy, but he's, I believe, 27 entering the season. So I'm not exactly sure. You know, potentially I wrote that it could mean that there are possibly a younger quarterback out there that they're trying to bring in via an acquisition, via trade. Or, you know, obviously they're definitely going to draft one as well. So if they were to bring in another guy to compete with Kenny Pickett and draft one, that to me really would mean young quarterback room.
It's interesting. The other thing is they could have said that to let the Falcons know our offer is our offer. So you just never know this time of year. You also wrote an article, I'm curious, 5 likely targets for the Browns at 33. So that would be the second overall pick in that first round. And I like all of them. I'll take one of each. So you got Jackson Dart, you got Travion Henderson, tight end, Mason Taylor, Josh Connerly, and Luther Burden. Again, the Browns need to kind of replenish playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. People are probably getting sick of hearing me say that. Of those, who do you like perhaps the most? All 5 of those are there. Who you liking the most for the Browns?
I think for me, if all 5 of them are there, I really like Luther Burden and his fit into the offense. He's a guy that has kind of seemed to have dropped a little bit over this draft cycle for reasons that definitely I can tell you aren't tape related. I think it's more of his mental makeup and maybe some issues off the field. I've heard that some call him maybe a little bit high maintenance player, and a lot of receivers are like that. So, but on tape, I mean, Burden's a guy who just really stands out. You can use him in all varieties of ways. He can beat the defense over the top with his speed. He can run away from guys, and then also, you can do things with him out of the slot, like motions and jet sweeps and things like that, just to get the ball in his hand. That I think the Browns could really use a dynamic playmaker like that. And if he's there at 33, that would be my top choice for the Browns, provided obviously that they don't select Travis Hunter with the 2nd pick.
All right, you know what? They need playmakers. You want 2? Sure, take 2, get 3, get 4. We've got a 2-for-1 special on wide receivers that can threaten a defense and running backs too.
No doubt.
The other thing, 3 players on the Browns roster who could surprise in 2025, and Luke Whippler, center from Ohio State. Myles Garrett was a draft pick, got banged up and didn't really get to perform like the Browns thought he might last year. And then Juwan Briggs, a guy that was drafted 7th round out of Cincinnati, and whenever he was on the field, you kind of noticed who he was.
Yeah, he really impressed and stood out last year at the end of the season after coming up from the practice squad. And I expect him to take another step forward this year. He's had another off season to get stronger. And, he certainly did a great job of being able to penetrate, in the middle of the defense there last season. Luke Whippler is a guy, it was unfortunate that he missed all of last year with the broken ankle. He's coming back from that, and I think he should be given every opportunity to compete with Ethan Pochik for the starting job at center. And, the Browns drafted him. They got him kind of a steal. He probably should have stayed in school one more year and would have been drafted a lot higher. But I think the talent is there, and I think Whippler could be somebody who really impresses this season and if he has a really nice training camp. Myles Garrett, the final guy on that list, cornerback, drafted late last year. He was one of the players that I was really excited to see. Unfortunately, he also missed most of the season with a shin injury, and I think that he could be a guy that we watch in training camp. There were reports last training camp that he was somebody who was out there making plays. And I think we'll see that again, as his confidence grows. And I think that should see an uptick in his performance as well.
All right, before I let you go, 3 trade proposals Browns should make before the NFL draft. Wrote an article on it. So you've got Greg Newsome in a 7th-round pick for Luke Musgrave, tight end from the Packers. 6th-round pick this year, 6th-round pick next year for Bears wide receiver Tyler Scott. And then 2025 6th-round pick and a 7th-round pick next year for Jalen Hyatt. So, again, trying to get some of the younger wide receivers and a tight end. Of those, which do you like the most?
Well, I really like the idea of bringing in a tight end, and Musgrave would be that guy. Also, Michael Mayer is an option out there that has been floated around. Not sure if the Raiders are actually going to, take somebody up on an offer there. But, a tight end or a receiver, if you could get one of those positions ahead of the draft, that would allow you to prioritize other areas early in the draft. And I think those guys could all come in and, compete at a level to, press for playing time. And they all have skill sets that would really help either the tight end room or the receiving core.
Damon Wolfe, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Damon.
No problem, Dave. Anytime. Thank you.
Damon Wolfe, make sure you check him out. Dogs by Nature. Always really insightful and good Browns coverage. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We turn our attention to the Cavaliers. Ethan Sands, Cavs beat reporter, straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We're out here busting common lottery myths by talking to real players just like you and you. If an Ohio Lottery scratch-off game has 1 in 4 odds, that means if I were to buy 4 tickets in a row, I'm guaranteed to be a winner. True or false?
I'm gonna say true. Oh, that's false.
You're right, it's false. The jackpot for the Mega Millions is at its highest it's ever been before. I now have worse odds. True or false?
True.
False. False? That is exactly right. You can learn more by going to ohiolottery.com/knowtheodds.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We turn our attention to the Cavaliers. ESPN's national analyst Brian Windhorst talking about how Evan Mobley's defense is perceived. This from 5 Good Minutes with Windy.
I routinely, when it comes to the all-defensive team and defensive player of the year, I ask coaches and executives. And I've begun doing that. I got my ballot notification in the mail and the email on Monday. And I I'm collecting information, and Evan Mobley definitely has believers out there. I had one general manager tell me that when we play the Cavs, he's our number one priority that we have to deal with. We have to try to get him out of the middle because his length and his versatility causes us problems on every possession. He said, you should absolutely vote for Evan.
Let's welcome in Ethan Sands, Cavs beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Ethan, how important is Evan Mobley, not only his defense, but how important is he to the Cavs and their goal of winning an NBA championship?
He's who's going to lead the charge, right? And Darius Garland said it just yesterday after the game that he is the best player on the Cavs. He's the one that's going to make this team go. He is who's the deciding factor of the ceiling of this playoff run. Who is going to tell you whether or not they're going to get to their goal, which is the Eastern Conference Finals, facing the Boston Celtics ideally or likely, and then getting past them, right? That's the biggest goal. And for him, it's more so on the offensive end. We know what he does on the defensive end is going to be stellar, but he needs to be able to contribute each night on the offensive end. He needs to be aggressive. He needs to be selfish at times rather than the selfless and the humble player that we all know him to be. He has the 6th best net rating of any player in the NBA this season who has played at least 65 games this year. That just tells you how important he is, not only to this Cavs team, but as reporters and NBA executives have said, he's the number one priority when other teams are looking at this Cavs team.
What have you thought of Donovan Mitchell's leadership this season?
I mean, it has been the biggest change of this team. Obviously, he led a different kind of way last year. It was more so telling and trying to showcase his abilities and pull the team along with him. Now he's pushing guys forward by empowering them. He's not necessarily taking the ball out of their hands and going to get 40, 50 as we know he can, but he's just giving Evan Mobley the ball, empowering him. Playing in lineups more so with Evan Mobley has allowed him to have a different outlook on the perspective of the game. Darius Garland has played to a different caliber this season because of what Donovan Mitchell has allowed him to do to playing off the ball. And it's not necessarily just on the court, it's off the court as well. Being able to help guys with their routines, help guys understand how important rest, recovery, all those things are. And we saw it in the game the other night where Jared Allen got the block against Karl Anthony Towns. Donovan Mitchell's on the bench and he runs over to pick his teammate up. Same thing happened with Darius Garland earlier in that game. So you understand that he is not only someone that is leading by example with his play, but he's also doing it from a perspective of he's the guy that's going to take this team and help them elevate to the next level because he believes that every player on this team is capable and is worthy of being on this roster and having some form of contribution.
So Jared Allen hasn't missed a game all season, in part because one of his goals was to play all 82. But what have you seen from him as of late as the Cavs start ramping up towards that playoff push?
I mean, Jared Allen has been unbelievable in the last couple of games, right? In his last 2 games, he scored 10 or more field goals while shooting 90% from the field. He is the first Cleveland Cavalier to ever do that and just the 9th in NBA history. So we talk about what he's been able to do ramping up into the playoffs, but also his defensive identity as well. He's been the anchor and also the vocal piece of that defense all season long. So I think it's a testament to the selfless nature of this team and how someone with the caliber and the perspective and just the personality of Jared Allen, who is so beloved in that Cavs locker room, can be such a vital piece while also understanding that just a few weeks ago, he was on the bench in closing minutes. He wasn't playing in fourth quarters. Now, there are scenarios where he is playing in fourth quarters. So be able to have that role fluctuate and doing it with a smile. That is what encapsulates this entire Cleveland Cavaliers team, and especially Jared Allen is at the forefront of that.
So when you look at Kenny Atkinson's first season as head coach of the Cavs, what have you been most impressed by? I mean, there's a lot to be impressed by. When you look at it, though, what do you like? Man, this guy got that right from the get-go.
His planning, right? And being able to tap in with every single play and push the right buttons with every player. Because not every player can be coached the same. But it feels like since the very beginning, when Kenny Atkinson came and took this job with the Cleveland Cavaliers, he had to take a flight from France back to Cleveland. Then he took a flight to LA. Then he took a flight to Nashville. Then he took a flight to Connecticut to speak with Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, and Evan Mobley to plan out this season. The plan that everybody's been seeing throughout this entire season. When you talk about how Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley have played less minutes thus far into the season and now are going to ramp up their minutes before the playoffs, that was always in the plan. Getting more rest days. He talked about having a PowerPoint where they understood the amount of, or the lack thereof, of practice days and how recovery days were going to be more so of that. And then you talk about utilizing the bench role, and this is news as well. Kenny Atkinson says that he plans to start every playoff series with a rotation of at least 10. Obviously, that can change, that can shrink if the players that are the 10th or 9th player on that rotation are not playing to their caliber or not playing to that standard in their certain matchups. But that's the idea, right? Being able to celebrate the depth. And that has allowed the Cavs and the bench unit, especially, to, in this season alone, break so many records, including the most three-pointers by a bench unit in NBA history, which they broke the other night against the New York Knicks.
Also keeps everybody confident and you know, engaged and ready to go whenever needed, matchup dependent.
100%. It feels like the empowerment has been to another level. Everybody that we've talked to has said that they're playing freer, healthier. And obviously there are players that are going to be put in proverbial bubble wrap for the remainder of the season. When you talk about guys like DeAndre Hunter, Dean Wade, Max Strus, and Ty Jerome, to ensure that these guys that one either haven't had playoff experience or are trying to make their moment in the playoffs, to ensure and to show that this Cavs team is not just a regular season team, that they can take it to the next level. That's what Kenny Atkinson's plan has been all along. I remember telling you a couple weeks ago, looking back at Kenny Atkinson's introductory press conference, the transcript of that, There was multiple conversations and discussions about the playoffs then, and he hadn't even gotten to training camp at that point. Sure, he had just got to Cleveland in that point. So I think it's so important how Kenny Atkinson has managed not only the star players, but also the bench units. And he's talked about how that has allowed him, and he's seen that this Cavs team is the most selfless, and he hasn't had anybody on this team come and knock in his office and asking for more minutes, more playing time, more touches. None of that, because they all trust and believe in what he's been able to do and accomplish because of what he laid the groundwork with at the beginning from the very start of touching down in Cleveland.
Ethan Sands, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Ethan.
Thanks for having me.
Ethan Sands, make sure you check him out. Cavs coverage from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We turn our attention to the Guardians. Zack, Meisel from The Athletic. Straight ahead, stay with us.
We're out here busting common lottery myths by talking to real players just like you. And you. If an Ohio lottery scratch-off game has 1 in 4 odds, that means if I were to buy 4 tickets in a row, I'm guaranteed to be a winner. True or false?
I'm going to say true.
Oh, that's false.
You're right, it's false. The jackpot for the Mega Millions is at its highest it's ever been before. I now have worse odds. True or false?
True. False.
False? That is exactly right. You can learn more by going to ohiolottery.com/know the odds.
We turn our attention to the Guardians. A day off today, getting ready for a 3-game series against the Angels, and then next week they come home to open up the home opener against the White Sox. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
I feel like with the trade for Manzardo, you can say that the Guardians have won that trade. I mean, granted, it was just opening day, but if you watched him last year come down the stretch and through the playoffs, I feel like he's going to be a guy for the Guardians, and I'm happy if they just give him some at-bats and let him work his way, get him some at-bats. I think he's going to be just fine.
Let's welcome in Zack Meisel, the Guardians beat reporter for The Athletic. Zack, so far, spring training in the first 2 series, Manzardo looks like he belongs kind of in the middle of an order.
He looks like he belongs in the middle of this order or an order from like 1987 with the mustache, and he's got kind of an old school swing. You know, he keeps both hands on the bat. I was thinking Don Mattingly as I was watching him on opening day, and then I pulled up a video of Mattingly hitting a home run in 1995, and it's vintage Manzardo right there. So I'm sticking with that comparison. And obviously, if the Guardians get that sort of production out of their the future first baseman and present day DH, I think they'll be thrilled. So, yeah, I mean, he looks like he was born to hit. I agree. Like, that trade had a lot of promise from the beginning. He was dealing with a shoulder injury when they traded for him about 2 years ago, and you wondered what Aaron Savali would do in Tampa, and they never really fixed him the way Tampa fixes a lot of pitchers. So it already looks good. It has a chance to be an excellent trade for Cleveland as long as he just gets at bats and keeps chugging along at the plate.
Yeah, and you know, to your point, the 1987 Matting, I love it because stays behind the ball, uses the whole field, doesn't, and as long as he does that, he's going to end up being just fine. As long as he doesn't try to pull everything and feel the need to try to hit 25. You know, he may hit 25 home runs anyway. He just can't feel the need to do that, I think.
And the one question was, could he hit lefties? And then on opening day, he hit a double, a triple, and a home run, all off lefties, right? So it's in there. He hit another home run later in the series off a lefty. I said to him over the weekend, I said, like, you know, a lot of times young players come up and they get shielded, and especially left-handed hitters, the manager just wants them to focus on righties. And if you prove you can hit righties, then maybe you can face both sets of pitchers. And he said, look, I've hit lefties my whole life. Like, this doesn't have to be a thing I can play every day. And so far, he's proving it.
So Guardians get swept by the Padres now. Granted, King and Cease pretty good pitchers, but in that 3-game series, 33 strikeouts. How concerning is that if you're Stephen Vogt?
Yeah, I think the concern is, what is the identity of this offense? Like, what is this team going to be? We don't really We don't know, right? I mean, you had Ramirez and Naylor in the middle, and that was kind of your heartbeat. You had Quan table setting for them. And now, like, I like what we've seen from Manzardo. I feel like there have been flashes where you see Nolan Jones and the power and speed combination he has. But, like, they need Bo Naylor. They need Brian Rocchio. They need Lane Thomas. They need these Thomas is a little older, but they need these young hitters kind of in the middle toward the bottom of the lineup just so that they're able to sustain these innings. You know, they have not had innings where they've had 4 or 5 hits, you know, a bunch of singles and a bunch of running, and it leads to a 3-run inning. They haven't had that. They've honestly been living and dying with the home run ball, which is not, I don't think that's the identity that this offense is eventually going to assume. So, you know, they haven't had a stolen base yet through 6 games. 9 doubles is not a lot. They just, it's kind of been, they just haven't been able to put enough together. And I think it's because you have guys in each third of the lineup who have struggled. So, you know, that could change. It's a small sample size, but they especially need those young hitters who they were banking on development for, the Naylors, the Rocchios. They need those guys this is a big year for them, and they need those guys to step up.
I know you wrote an article about John Kenzie Noel and his attempt to kind of become consistent power hitter for the Guardians. Take us through that and kind of where you went with that article.
Yeah, you know, I noticed him in spring training every day, just the biggest grin on his face, like a guy who is just thrilled to be a Major League Baseball player. And you talk to him about his upbringing and in the Dominican, and it was baseball, it was school, and it was home. That's it. He said those were his 3 phases of life, and his parents pulled him out of school, I think when he was like middle school aged, and then it was just baseball and home. So he's been plotting for this for a long time, and you know, it's so fascinating to me the moment he experienced in the playoffs where he hits this home run that people are going to remember for the rest of their lives. And even he said, like, I don't get sick of watching that, listening to the great home run calls. People would stop him in the airport. People would stop him at the grocery store just to tell him how cool of a moment that was. Now, how does he take that and make a career out of it? You know, you don't want to live on one moment you experienced as a rookie for your whole life. So obviously his calling card is power. The guy's built like an edge rusher. And it's a matter of truly just swinging at strikes and laying off the sliders that bounce in the dirt. And if he can do that, and it's a huge if, he can be a power threat that Cleveland has needed for a long time. So he's one of the more interesting players this season just because I feel like he kind of controls his own destiny. You know, if he hits and proves more patient at the plate, he's going to get more and more playing time. And that gives him more and more confidence to keep laying off those pitches and crushing the right ones. So it'll be interesting to see his growth throughout the season. I think we've seen guys in similar positions flame out. And how can he make sure he's not the next Franmil Reyes, the next Oscar Gonzalez? He's certainly having a good time trying to figure that out.
So again, we've said small sample size. It's 2 series, 6 games. Some of the most encouraging things that you have seen from the Guardians, and then some of the ones that you kind of go, man, they got to get those things fixed.
Yeah, on the offensive side, it's Manzardo, and then the pitching side, it's the usual suspects. I think just watching Gavin Williams and Tanner Bybee pitch the way you thought they could, especially Williams, who had an incredible spring after a rough season last year. And I thought he looked really good in Kansas City. And I think as the rest of the rotation gets sorted out and Luis Ortiz works through a lot of mechanical adjustments and Logan Allen figures out if he's a major leaguer, if you have to go to Joey Cantillo or Tristan McKenzie, you know, it's important for Bybee and Williams to carry the rotation. It's one start for each of them. But I thought Bybee made his start in Kansas City look effortless, getting through 5 2/3 scoreless. And I thought Williams, you know, he said he didn't even have a good fastball in his start, and he was throwing 98, 99, 100 miles an hour. So I'm not really sure what a good fastball looks like. But I think it's encouraging just if those two from the get-go can be your anchors. I think that's a big start.
Yeah, I'm with you. Logan Allen was the one, you know, the 5 walks, and it's like, stop stop hurting yourself because you know, he'd get out of it, but it's like you've exhausted so many pitches to work out of the jam you created.
It's the old cliche, trust your stuff, right? Because if you can't trust your stuff, then you probably don't have the stuff to be a big league pitcher. And he looked sharp all spring, but you know, you get into a little bit of trouble in a major league game in the regular season when there's stakes involved, and I think that trust can dissipate pretty quickly. So it'll be interesting to see how long of a leash they have with him. And then, you know, you still need Ben Lively and Luis Ortiz to pitch better than they have. I know Lively was not bad in that first start. He made one big mistake, not so good against San Diego. So they can't get in a situation where they're putting so much pressure on the bullpen 3 out of every 5 games. That's the key. So they'll have to figure that out. That's also why Carl Willis is as good as it gets as a pitching coach, why they've had the reputation for so long that they have on the pitching side. But you know, you just the strategy they deployed last year where every reliever on their team, it seemed like, was pitching every day and not giving up runs. That was great. It's really hard to capture that 2 years in a row. So if you're the Guardians, you don't even want to have to get in a position where you're thinking along those lines.
All right, before I let you go, again, I know you wrote another article. You know that last year Guardians got so close, they could almost taste the World Series. How is that kind of motivating? What is most of that core is back?
It's an interesting exercise in psychology, I think. You know, I remember when they lost Game 5 to the Yankees, players kind of gathered in small clusters in the clubhouse and sat there talking for a long time. Like this was not like a, hey, we're excited to be here. No one thought we'd get to the ALCS, and you know, we gave it all we could. Now let's go home and enjoy our offseason. That team was severely disappointed to not advance to the World Series. And I think the leader, Austin Hedges, you know, he tasted the World Series. He won a World Series in Texas in 2023 and marveled at the hundreds of thousands of fans that gathered for the parade. And it was a great experience for him. And then he thought about what it would mean in Cleveland, a place where he's been, aside from that 1 year, since 2020. And it would pale in comparison. You know, you think about the franchise, the drought that dates back to 1948. You think about all the close calls over the years. Think about the fans who just want to see one before they die. And those are motivating factors too. And so I think this team, the players who were able to experience that last year, they sort of have a blueprint now. They have a path. They know what it takes to get to that point. Now it's about executing it again and taking it a couple steps further. But I think, you know, the one thing they stressed last year was whether it's April 3rd or September 3rd, you know, all the games count the same and you can't take the foot off the gas. And they went 7-2 on that opening road trip last season, and it really set the tone for the whole year. They never looked back. They were in first place, I think, all but 6 days of the regular season. And so it's important, you know, you look at it now, they're tied for first at 2-4, but you want to make sure that you're setting the tone and keeping that foot on the gas, because you really don't want to hit that break until October's done.
Zack Meisel, thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much. Thanks, Zack.
You got it, Dave. Take care.
Zack Meisel, make sure you check him out. Great Guardians coverage. He is the Guardians beat reporter for The Athletic. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.